What's up, good people? Welcome back to the Basketball Society podcast. I'm back here with my friend, longtime NBA insider, one of the best in the business, in my opinion, Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. Good to have him back. We've been just chopping it up on some NBA stuff lately, so hope you've been enjoying. Make sure you subscribe to Basketball Society and the channel for even more basketball conversations and content like this. Scoop B, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Man, I'm doing good. Just staying even keeled. We're into the swing of things with the playoffs. Got the Freeze Scoopy Originals presents the Freeze Out doc on the docket, and I'm sitting here or standing here in my home studio talking to you.
Yeah, congrats on that. And I want to chop it up a little bit more about that later. Really cool piece that you did on the infamous Michael Jordan freeze out All-Star game in 1985. Really cool piece and really speaks to just the kind of work that you do, which is always very thorough and very intriguing. So I definitely want to get to some of that later. And yeah, you mentioned the playoffs, and I want to start with it really jumps out to me as what I think is probably the biggest first round playoff matchup, Minnesota and LA. I feel like this is a big moment. And I talked to you recently on one of our sessions about how I feel about Anthony Edwards, and the clock is ticking in Minnesota, in my opinion. It's only a matter of time before, it's just considered that he might want to get out of there, or they might want to make some changes if they don't see more success soon with him as their leading superstar. I just see the matchup as so fascinating. It's a chance for Anthony Edwards to do something pretty special, to beat Luka and LeBron in a first round playoff series. That in itself would be a pretty major statement. So I think the Lakers they're just playing fun. They just got Luka. There's not much. I mean, there's expectations because it's the Lakers, and now that you think they could make a run, there's some pressure and expectation there. But I just think the Luka experiment, they just got him. I think they're just still riding on vibes. But I just feel like either way, this could be if the Lakers do great and put away the Timberwolves, that's a big story for the Lakers, just for their progress. It's a big story for the Timberwolves and their regression. If the Timberwolves move on, that's a big story. I just feel like it's more important for the Timberwolves to get this series.
I'll add this. I think that the I have felt this way since the beginning of the season. I felt that the Clippers were the better team in Los Angeles, just from continuity. I think obviously when you have the Lakers and you have the star power that is LeBron and Luka Doncic, and also in head coach JJ Redick, you pause and you say, "Wow, this is a team that has the chance to go the distance." I still have some questions about the center position. I thought that Alex Len at first was going to be able to solve the problem that was lacking, which is Anthony Davis. And now they're very much a guard and point guard, shooting guard, small forward oriented team. I think for the Los Angeles Lakers specifically, the person that we're not talking about that I think I'd expect to have a big series is Rui Hachimura, who they got from the Washington Wizards a couple of years ago. But if you're keeping it Minnesota Timberwolves, um, I think that for the Timberwolves, it would be on their onus to come away with a victory. Mike Conley Jr. has seen many of playoff series in his career. He's also on that team, but I think it's going to come down to coaching. There's more experience on the Timberwolves side of coaching, but I feel like JJ Redick, who I spent some time with during the season, wrote a feature on him, and some of his coaching experience and coaching influences over the years have definitely paid dividends. Usually, point guards transition well into good coaches. You've seen it with Jason Kidd. We've seen it with Avery Johnson and other people, but in this case, JJ Redick, a two guard by trade, has done a lot on the fly and has been successful in the regular season. But as you and I both know, the playoffs is a brand new game, and it's going to be interesting to see how Minnesota can take it. But I'll be honest with you, last season you saw flashes of for the Timberwolves of brilliance for that team. Of course, ultimately losing to the Dallas Mavericks, who would be eventual Western Conference champions. and go on to the finals and lose to Boston Celtics. But yeah, I'd like to see the Timberwolves redeem themselves. I'd like the Timberwolves to have some bragging rights in that trade for Karl Anthony Towns. I always felt that that trade benefited Minnesota more than it benefited the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks, of course, have a first round matchup against the Detroit Pistons. But I'm glad to see the ability or the alacrity that both Julius Randle and Anthony Edwards have with each other and their responsibilities, and also seeing Julius Randle and Mike Conley Jr. Bounce off the ball from each other, and there's no fighting over who can control the offense. So I do like Minnesota as a team. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against the Los Angeles Lakers in round one.
Well, the Lakers are interesting because I mean it's obviously all built around Luca and LeBron, but you mentioned Rui. I think he's going to be huge for that matchup because I think you need your like other athletic younger wings because Minnesota's younger. I think the Lakers are pretty long, and you know you're right. They're like they've got big guards and they've got their wings. They've got big wings too. Um, so I think that matchup on the wing with like Minnesota's wings versus the Lakers' wings is going to be big. Obviously, the star matchup between Ant and then Luca and LeBron on the other side. You mentioned JJ's coaching. One thing that I've been saying to people ever since JJ got the job and as we've seen the kind of coaching that he's been doing, like one thing that really had me encouraged about JJ Redick being a head coach, and I didn't see too many people really hit on this specific aspect of it, even though he was coming out of the podcasting world. We all saw what he was doing with his podcast. He wasn't just giving NBA takes and having debates about top 5 and top 10. He was, I mean, right before he finished podcasting, he literally started a new podcast with LeBron that was centered around sets and plays, not just sets and plays, but what teams run, what teams in the league do, trends that are
Hmm.
happening with offense, with defense, with coverages, with small ball, all kinds of things. I mean, the Mind the Game pod was built around that theme. And even before then,
Hmm.
he's talking to Joe Mazzulla. He's having coaches on his podcast to talk specifically about scheme, cadence, what you're running, JJ was really low key using his podcast to study the league and what teams were doing, what coaches were
And
doing, and I think that clearly benefited him coming into that position.
Steve Nash is doing the same thing now with LeBron.
Well, I mean, I find that interesting because he had his crack at it before, and now people are joking that this is Nash's unofficial, like, second crack at trying to get another
Hmm.
job. And I mean, what do you think? Isn't it a little funny that that podcast kind of becomes that even the Steve Nash pick for that was even made it even more interesting to me because I'm like, he had a head coaching stint before, it didn't work out. Does this just now become the new thing where you just sit a guy across from LeBron just to show that they still have a strong basketball mind and maybe they get a job from it?
Yeah, this is kind of his version of "you're fired" or "you're hired"
Mm.
in comparison to things that are going on outside of the realm of sports. I won't put name to it, but if you're smart, you know what I'm talking about. So, it's interesting you bring that up about JJ Redick specifically. I caught up with JJ back in February, and I wanted to kind of bring some context to just his coaching. He told me back in February that there have been coaches in his life who have given him inspiration, and he takes it back to his days with Delmar Irving with the Roanoke Jaguars, an AAU team. He also talked about his relationship with Boo Williams, who you know well. He coached Allen Iverson and others from the great state of Virginia, as well as Chris Morris. He said he's always respected the role of coaching. He's had the privilege of playing for one of the greatest coaches in any sport in Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, during his time at Duke. And then he went on to talk about some of the other coaches in the NBA, including Stan Van Gundy, who he had as his coach in Orlando with the Magic, as well as Doc Rivers in Orlando, and of course Brett Brown during his time in Philadelphia as a member of the 76ers. And he said all three of those guys were great influence. And he said with each of them, he took bits and pieces for his own philosophy, daily messaging. But honestly, coming into this role, it's a whole new game. And he went on to say, you got to be yourself, but you also got to stay open-minded. It's been a ride. And honestly, the only thing that caught me off guard was the Palisades fire. Of course, JJ Redick was one of the people who lost his home in the Palisade fire earlier this year in the Los Angeles area. And even in spite of that, he's still been consistent, diligent, and it helps when you have the game's best player today, and LeBron James is uh, one of your um, one of your key pieces on that team. So I think it's a lot of learning on the job, and I also just think that the coaching position in the NBA is a lot different now. A lot of front offices want guys who have locker room experience and aren't that far removed from the game. Even in television, you're seeing it. Marcus Morris on ESPN recently talking about the Memphis Grizzlies and referring to YNs. We can't even use that word anymore because now we know what that means. Those who didn't know, now they know. It's cover's blown. But that being said, the young nephews and the old unc and him, those type of conversations and messaging in locker rooms, is appreciated. So Steve Nash got his first crack at it with the Brooklyn Nets. It didn't go as he thought it would, and with James and Kyrie and Kevin, and he's going back into think tank, and he's doing that pod with LeBron, and you saw JJ Redick as the precursor to that. So it'll be interesting to see how that all fares out with Nash, and you're seeing the fruits of the podcast labor with JJ Redick, and now as the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers.
I mean, do you agree that there's like say the Lakers lose this first round series, there's really no pressure there, right? Like I don't think there's any pressure for them to do it this year. Like I think they're just playing with house money.
I think the Lakers are preparing for life after LeBron and enjoying LeBron while he's there. And it'll be interesting to see what the Lakers can get in the offseason as far as free agent targets and or trades. And it'll be as far as Nico goes, if the Lakers were to lose in the first round, I mean, the perception is the perception. Maybe for his morale, yeah, but um, I still think that the Dallas Mavericks have some additional pieces that they need to get to accommodate that organization. And so it's less to do with Nico, it's more to do with the Lakers, and less to do with the Lakers and more to do with Nico. They're their own separate entity.
Sorry to break up this video. I just wanted to say thank you for watching and supporting Basketball Society. You can keep supporting by subscribing to the channel and stay tapped in with our basketball content. You won't regret it.
You mentioned the other LA team, and as of late, the Clippers have looked really good. They've won like 17 of their last 20. Harden and Kawhi, both healthy, both active, both doing their thing, playing off each other. Norman Powell has come on and played really well for them. Zubac, who was really, I've always liked him. He's just so legit as a center for them. The combination of Harden and Kawhi feels right. What Harden does, what Kawhi does, it feels right. Harden needs those kind of players around him that can do in between stuff, little things. Harden really is, like he had said, I mean, he is the system. And when it's rolling, and it works, and the ball's in his hand, and he's creating a lot of the decisions. What do you see as the ceiling for the Clippers with Kawhi healthy and with Harden rolling like this?
The Clippers, to me, have matriculated on both sides of the season, first half and the second half, the way that I thought the Knicks would with injuries. And the Clippers transitioned from Kawhi being hurt to coming back and didn't miss a beat because Norman Powell was playing at such an all-star level and Harden was consistent. When I look at the Clippers, I think the portion of it that's going to really stand out in the playoffs, if continuous health is on the menu, is the matchup between Zubac and Jokic. I think Zubac is one of the most underrated centers in the NBA, period. And I felt that I've seen his growth throughout the last 2 years, 2.5 years, and playing alongside of James Harden makes James Harden's job a lot easier. Harden coming out of Philadelphia, playing alongside Joel Embiid, you kind of saw the blueprint in some ways, and how Ivica Zubac would benefit from a playmaker who can score and create any shot that is a system in James Harden. And they've been rolling all season. I was in LA early in the season checking out the Clippers when they played against the Spurs. And I watched Zubac going up against um, Victor Wembanyama, and that was slight work in comparison to going against Jokic. And Wemby's going to only get better, but I really like the way he spaces the floor. He can kick out of a double team. And James Harden can do some of the same things. We've always talked about the Clippers and their health. You're hopeful that that injuries don't seep in the playoffs the way they have in the past for the Clippers. So the jury is still out. In the regular season, the Clippers have played good basketball, and when guys were hurt and didn't step up, they were able to fill voids. So I think every year we say this could be the Clippers' year. If there is ever a year that could be the Clippers' year, maybe this is the year. New stadium, expectations, and I'm hopeful that they can. And what a matchup to go against a Nuggets team, another team who does not reflect their record.
Yeah, I think that's another big first round matchup right there. That can be a statement win for both teams. Probably more so the Clippers. Um, but the Nuggets need to winning that series would be a statement for them just internally to show that they can that they're not going to fold. And after having just fired their head coach, it would just that wouldn't be a good look to drop a first round series to the Clippers, of all people. But I see that too as another statement series where both teams, really could use that win. It feels like Harden and Kawhi was really like, yeah, and Harden had the quote recently saying something about you guys saw the players we had last year, so people, pointed at Paul George with that remark. And but when you look at it and think about it, it makes sense because I mean Harden is so much of, like we said, the system. Um,
And they
Kawhi,
laughed when he said it.
and they laughed when he said it. And we all saw how it was in Houston, and we know, and people laughed because they felt like he wasn't the same James Harden in Houston. But all he was trying to remind people is that, hey, like even if I'm not that, I'm still one of the best point guards, playmakers, decision makers, scoring lead guards, out here in the NBA. And if the system, which is mainly just pick and roll, spread offense, like kind of 4 out 1 in, that's where he really thrives. If that's what we're playing, I'm gonna look good, and our team is gonna look good. We're gonna win games, and yeah, they did. They sure did laugh at him. What stands out to you? Because again, I love the combination of Harden and Kawhi. I feel like Kawhi's never had like that kind of guy next to him, a Harden, and Harden hasn't had. He's had like good defenders and good 3-and-D guys around him, but I mean, he's obviously played. He played with KD. He played with Kyrie, but Kawhi is kind
But
of
they're
just
not
like
defenders like that.
not defenders like that. Kawhi's just a
Mhm.
I mean, we know he's not like anyone else. Like he's just totally
Kawhi
unique. And
Leonard is Kawhi Leonard is Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen in one. I
right.
said
I
it.
mean, that's yeah. I mean, that's and bro, the more over the years he's expanded his stuff off the dribble and just triple threat and pull up jump shot game, the more that's reigned true because it used to be more Scotty. And over the last few years, even since they won, he won the title in Toronto in 2019, it was like you're starting to see a little bit more Mike in that skill set in that
But
offense.
like Mike at 97, 98, not Mike in 91 to 93.
Sure.
Mike at 91, 93 gave you penny fadeaway, older penny fadeaway. Gave you making more timed jumpers, more
Hmm.
calculated. He used more brain, less physical ability, and using more. Did I say right? Use more brain, less physical ability, and didn't physically exert himself to the point of
In
exhaustion.
in nine, you're saying 97, 98. In
Yeah.
90, yeah.
91 to 93, it was all based off of youth and
Jumping
breakneck
around,
speed.
jumping over people, jumping.
95 to 96, it was getting reacclimated after baseball. But 97 to 98, and then you saw that carry over on the Wizards, where it was more
For sure.
jab step, pump fake, fadeaway jumpers, some movement to the basket, kick it out the double team. There is a remnant of Michael from 97 to 98 and even Wizards Michael and Kawhi now, that I see, except James Harden is no Jerry Stackhouse or Larry Hughes. He's James Harden.
Right, right. There's such a polished simplicity to what you're
Hmm.
describing with like the older Mike and this version of Kawhi. Like there's, he's so strong, he can handle the ball, but his handles even progress. Like he'll come up and hit a double between, cross between and stuff, and all of a sudden you're like, yo, like maybe he's working out with Harden on the side. Like he just seems to be
Hmm.
adding stuff even more. What 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 is it about Harden to you? Like when you watch Harden, you've seen him in person enough to like what do you notice the most about what makes him so difficult still?
He hasn't really changed his game. Like I remember having a conversation with Kenny Smith, many of conversations, but in this particular conversation with Kenny was talking about how you notice that during LeBron's career, he's never had a go-to move. Like in your history of watching LeBron, is there a go-to move that LeBron has?
Other than put the head down and drive the ball with his 6'9" self. No.
Right, 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 right. Then
Right.
you look at Hakeem. It's the dream shake. It's the
Yeah.
and the counters to that. You look at AI and Isaiah Thomas and Tim Hardaway. It's the crossover.
Yeah.
You look at Mark Jackson. It's the post up as a point guard and the pinpoint accuracy at the free throw line. Right. Comparatively, when you look at James Harden, his go to is multiple things.
Yeah.
It's the drawing the foul.
Yeah.
It's the kicking out of the double team. There's so many things that equate what James is. And James, like LeBron, to tie it back into LeBron, has never really had to change his style of play
Hmm.
to accommodate his teammates. He's always been the same from Oklahoma
Yeah.
to the Clippers,
Yeah.
right? And so when I look at what James is doing, um, he's dialed in. Like he's the same. He has the same routine pregame. He has the
Mhm.
same routine, filling out the game, filling out his opponents, and then taking over when he needs to, pulling back when he needs to, kicking out to Zubac. I honestly think Zubac is a bet is more of a luxury in Los Angeles than Harden, or excuse me, Zubac is more of a luxury with the Clippers than Embiid is with Philly
Hmm.
because Zubac strictly is in the post. He's not playing the wing and the perimeter like Harden, and there's nothing wrong with it. That fits in Philly's system,
Sure.
but that's what you have Kawhi Leonard for.
Yeah.
That's what you have Norman Powell for. He's literally in a groove where he's literally Michael Knight on Knight Rider. He's talking to Kit. He's talking to Devin. He's talking to Bonnie. He's jumping over cars. He's jumping over trucks. He's pulling the joints. He's getting everything. He's all purpose everything. He is Michael Knight on Knight Rider for the Clippers.
Again, I his style, it's a lot like Steve Nash, I want to say, with just his pick and roll game, where he just needs
Sure.
a big that will set the strong screen, roll hard. If he can make the opposite pass if he can make passing reads out of it, great. But like, just give me a good big that's able to roll, that's gonna do the simple catch and finish jump hooks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Joel Embiid, super talented and able to be effective anywhere on the floor. There were flashes of him and Embiid working really well together because they're both really talented players. But I just think James is much better with a big like a Zubac who was going to keep it simple, who's going to do the little things, the dirty and like, you're not going to him at the elbow for face up isolation, one on one, read the defense like you will with Joel Embiid. Like Zubac is a very specific role oriented big who has real skill to him. So I think we're seeing like I really think that is the perfect kind of prototypical big for James Harden.
I was mad at the Lakers when they traded him to the Clippers because they could really use him now.
Talking with NBA insider, my good friend Brandon Scoop B Robinson, scoopb.com. Let's talk Denver a little bit. Like we just said, they're playing against the Clippers in that first round matchup. Um, and, it, you know, since firing their head coach, I did see your report recently that Mike Malone might be on Phoenix's radar, um, as you know, potentially as their next head coach. Um, but what you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier with the coaching cycles and the trends with what owners are looking for even more with head coaches now. How do you think that might have translated into and I know the news was out there about Mike Malone and the GM not getting along too well and they kind of just let both of them go. But what do you I mean, how do you see that signaling the future for Denver, especially with someone like Jokic there who, obviously in the heart of his prime and you want to maximize it?
All indications are that he will return, and when he is offering an extension, he'll take it. I've heard nothing to the contrary of that. But as far as Mike Malone goes, I get a sense that it because of his personality, and in today's NBA, where a lot of guys, young guys, don't want to be yelled at, I think it just gets very interesting. And interesting is a very open-ended word in that instance. I do know, and it was out there, that he was upset that the Nuggets did not retain Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, someone that Malone thought very high of. Um, and I know that he was a fan of Russell Westbrook. And I just in watching games, there seemed to be times where Jamal Murray, who is Malone's guy, wasn't getting the same looks that Westbrook was, and Jamal's been there for a long time. I think that for Malone, it'll be interesting to see what that market looks like. Honestly, nothing I've heard just from an observation. If the Memphis Grizzlies don't retain their interim head coach, I think Mike Malone would fit in Memphis like a glove.
Mm.
He comes from a coaching tree. His dad, of course, Brendan Malone, the late Brendan Malone, assistant coach with the Knicks, as well as the Pistons. He coached Isaiah Thomas, his dad, and in
Wow.
Detroit. He was that coach that Isaiah, the coach, told him, "Take your anger out on me," and he coached and he choked him. That's Mike Malone's dad,
Oh, wow.
Brendan Malone. But yeah, I think that a team like Memphis could utilize him quite a bit. A Jersey guy by way of Queens, Seton Hall Prep alum, um, a guy that's respected across the league, across many platforms. It just didn't work out, and I just think that coaches are getting shorter leashes. Um, I also look at across the league other guys that could be out. Um, Royal Ivy, Willie Greens, guys like that, who will get calls. I think even Coach Quinn out in Miami, assistant
Mm.
coach with the Miami Heat, he was interviewing for some positions last summer, and he stayed in Miami. So yeah, there'll be some coaching candidates this offseason that could fit the bill, but I think it has to be a very specific. I don't look at the Budenholzers of the world as taking over those positions. I kind of feel like Mike Budenholzer is kind of entering Mike D'Antoni territory, where that's just a name that's consistently recycled. And I think we're in a position now where a lot of well-respected assistant coaches are going to get looks.
Everyone who has a feel for just like Jokic's temperament, like no one was even coming close to pointing the finger at him for Mike Malone. I mean,
Mm-mm.
it seemed like all indications where they had a, decent enough relationship. I've heard people mention the fact that just Jokic's background, where he comes from, they respect the coach. They don't challenge the coach. Like obviously you don't hear Jokic causing any fuss or challenging or calling people out or anything like that. So and like this is where the Jokic thing is just so interesting, but also a little confusing for me because people. It's almost like we're led to believe that he doesn't care about basketball that much, although he is like the best player in our league.
He's like the actual basketball player version of Greg Popovich.
With someone like Jokic, I don't know if he's more likely to just carry on in his career, not make a fuss about roster or coach or what are we doing to improve. I'm sure he wants to win, but he's never going to start actively and publicly complaining, I don't think. And I also, and on the other end, I don't know if he's going to be like super aggressive about recruiting, people to Denver or, just trying to make sure that the franchise is still competitive. Again, I'm sure he's a competitor and wants to win, but I struggle to think about what Denver's future is when their superstar, who is one of the top players in the league, uh, I don't want to say like he doesn't care because it's like that's not fully the case, but it's like does he care enough to put some pressure on? Like that's what we're used to stars
Yeah.
doing in the NBA is put a little pressure on the organization to do something. And does he have that in him? Does he care enough to even do that if things don't keep going well?
And I also think he was very protected under Malone and also under
Mm,
Calvin Booth, the GM that
mm,
they let go. Calvin Booth, highly respected across the NBA as a basketball mind, comes from the Dallas Mavericks tree as well. I think he spent some time with Minnesota as well. And answer to your question directly, I think there comes a point where things do run its course, and we kind of look at. I feel like we've looked at Denver as an infinite team for so long. This is the first time we've seen a blemish by letting go of Malone. And I was asked this on a television show in Chicago if I thought Jokic would come to the Bulls, and I said no. Um, I don't see it, but I also know the Bulls are making a rebuild, and they also have Vooch, so I don't think that that is the team. But it'll be interesting to see this summer what they do when they pick a coach and what pieces they add to make him want to stay. Because I think what we saw with Luka Doncic, there were many people who just assumed that Doncic was going to be like Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki and stay forever.
yeah.
And surprised it didn't happen that way. And so I think it's something to pay attention to, something to monitor. I don't have any information to suggest that he wants out or that things will change, but they're going to have to add pieces over time because the Western Conference is getting younger, and you're looking at the Oklahomas, you're looking at um, the Houston Rockets, you're looking at the Spurs, you're looking at Memphis, and in a few years, the Warriors are not going to be grandfathers. They're going to be great grandfathers in the NBA. They're still finding ways to appear in the playoffs, but Denver is not that won't be that far behind in the next couple of years as well.
Let's move over to the East for a minute. I think it's between Boston and Cleveland. I still think Boston is clearly just the best overall team, but just even taking a step back, and not just conceding it to Boston, but I just think the landscape of the Eastern Conference continues to evolve and get more interesting. And we've had six champions over the last 6 years, first time that's ever happened. So there's going to be opportunities for different franchises to come up, and I mean, I just think, like, again, the top two teams are known in the East. It's probably going to be Boston or Cleveland coming out. I would think Boston, but you
I
have
like
or
Detroit also.
well, I mean, listen, you've got Detroit, Orlando. You mentioned Chicago. I know you've covered there and you've spent a lot of time, doing good coverage there with the Bulls. And I know they're in the rebuild, but you still got the Pacers, you've still got Milwaukee. Giannis is back to like dominant Giannis form. So if he's healthy. So I mean, how do you see the Eastern Conference? Like, is it still Boston's like for sure to lose? Like, I mean,
I wouldn't
what are
say
you
for sure
thinking
to
about
lose.
it?
I just think Boston gives me 2000s Lakers vibes that they were
Hmm.
just going through the motions in the regular season and turning up another notch in the playoffs. Obviously, you're looking at Jalen Brown's knee, and I'm sure he'll be fine. But you're looking at guys on that roster, and they were kind of, I don't want to say going through the motions, but playing their way through to get to the playoffs, and this is their time to shine. Cleveland, could either really continue where they left off at in the playoffs versus the regular season, or are they going to be in a situation like the Atlanta Hawks some years ago where Cleveland ran through them? The jury is still out. I like Kenny Atkinson quite a bit, and I've you know stayed in touch with him throughout the course of the season, and have really seen how he and his team have executed without overexerting Donovan Mitchell.
Mm.
And so, not overexerting Donovan Mitchell, what does that mean in the playoffs?
Hmm.
Um, I think that Detroit um, has been consistent all year. I just think the national audience is not ready to accept that those guys are rolling at the speed they're rolling. I'm very worried about the Knicks in the playoffs against the Pistons, um,
I think that's
because
legit.
yeah, because as I said earlier in the program, that Timberwolves trade benefited, in my opinion, the Timberwolves more than it benefited the Knicks, because at the first half of the season, the Knicks, had some issues at times with Cat, if I'm not mistaken, and now they have those issues with Brunson. But I do feel like their bench at the guard position by committee has been productive. But that's still a team that Jalen Brunson has. Like we can colic us to death with no turnovers, but in the playoffs, I want to hear from Brunson. Um, Bridges, I think that trade at the draft benefited the Knicks when Brunson was down, but in the playoffs, you need Brunson and you need Bridges, you need all hands on deck. So that against Detroit, I am a little concerned with. Detroit's defense is crazy. Cade Cunningham is playing good basketball. Tobias Harris it, has been the gold that they needed that Philly missed out on. And I think that their head coach had the redeeming quality after being let go by the Cavaliers to go in and Bickerstaff and to kind of prove his worth, and he's done it.
I think it's interesting how, like a couple years ago, it was really Boston, Miami, Milwaukee were kind of the big three of the East, and they were all still at large. And, Miami loses Jimmy Butler. They've kind of taken a step back. Milwaukee had a coaching change. They got Damian Lillard, but they've still had to really kind of just reinvent their identity and get themselves back. And Boston has now separated themselves. I just think the East is going to keep fluctuating because you've got good teams, you've got star players, you've got guys coming up the ranks, Paolo and Cade and Ty Halliburton. You still got Trey Young wallowing away in Atlanta. You still got
Those
LaMelo
small
Ball.
market teams
Yeah.
are obliterating the perception that you have to be in Boston, Los Angeles, New York to do well. Everybody laughed at the Pistons in the offseason. Everybody laughed at Trajan Langdon and his front office role. And they've turned this thing around in Detroit. They've turned this thing around in Cleveland. And a lot of it in Cleveland last season was, the team stopped listening to Bickerstaff. And I even think, next season, you're going to see Charlotte try to pick it up some. They're still building.
Hmm.
Chicago was a notch above them because they're a playing team, but
Hmm.
you're seeing teams in the Midwest and the South play catch up with these Northeast and out West teams.
Yeah. And I'm high on LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Say what you want about either of them, both of them. I'm high on both of their talents, and if they can put stuff together, man, they're going to be
And,
dangerous.
and Brandon likes it in Charlotte. I spent quite a bit of time in Charlotte this season, and Brandon, I asked Brandon had just got back from New York from surgery, and he was like, "You like New York?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't."
Hmm.
He was, and he said, "I'm a country boy." So,
I was
you
about to
know,
say where he
he,
probably from the South.
Brandon Miller and I go back to a couple summers ago when he said something about Mike, and it went kind of viral, or it was about LeBron, it went kind of viral. And
Hmm.
but Brandon is about as honest. If he tell you something, he telling the truth. And
Mm.
I think both he and LaMelo Ball and Charlotte can create something, especially if Charlotte is able to get a top 3 pick in the draft and get a guy like Ace Bailey, who you see front row and center in New Jersey at Rutgers University. I'm going to be interested to see how that all plays out in Charlotte next season.
So the 1985 NBA All-Star Game, infamously known as the Michael Jordan freeze out game, all kinds of context behind it. If you watched The Last Dance, if you're kind of up on the Michael Jordan, Isaiah Thomas, backstory, rivalry, etc. I met the criteria, but I wasn't selected, all that good stuff. Scoop B original, your first in-house produced documentary piece. It's a little over 20 minutes long, really good. Just the kind of work that Brandon does with just really unpacking the history behind things, having conversations with meaningful people. Sidney Moncrief in there had me cracking up talking about how he really didn't remember. I think that was one of the things that really stood out to me from some of your conversations with people who played in that All-Star game, who were around during that time, and you asking them, like, what was Michael like? Just what was he like as a rookie? What was he like in the locker room during that game? And a few people said like they just couldn't remember. A couple guys were just like, I don't remember. And some of that may have something to do with being a seasoned Saint. They've the memory may not be too sharp, but also just to me spoke to um just the idea that Michael wasn't Michael yet. And I
Sure.
think you had even said that at one point during the piece that he wasn't that yet. He wasn't that guy yet. And but give us a little more context. And I even wanted to ask you, like, what prompted you, what created this desire to go ahead and do this documentary and dive in on this story even more.
Well, first of all, you can check out the Scoop B Originals Presents the Freeze Out on my YouTube channel. Subscribe at Scoop B TV. We talk to anybody from Dominique Wilkins to Sidney Moncrief to Michael Ray Richardson to Isaiah Thomas to uh, John Sally and a multitude of other people. And what got me kind of interested in it was I spent some time with Dominique Wilkins in the summertime in Los Angeles, and I asked him about the freeze out, and he was kind of hesitant. Like he didn't want to answer it. And for context, he participated in the slam dunk contest, so he was involved during All Star Weekend in 1985. But he didn't play in the game, and I noticed that when I dropped the interview, it was getting crazy traffic. Like that video, I think has close to 10,000 views on my YouTube channel. That whole interview, we didn't just talk about the freeze out. We talked about KD, LeBron, a bunch of different things, and I started thinking like, if that's getting that kind of traffic, what I have enough stuff in my library to kind of pull together and enough relationships to kind of get that going. So I started putting together, and one of the first things I did, I've not said this to anybody, I'll tell you, I called Isaiah Thomas directly and asked him for his blessing to do it,
Mm,
and he gave it to me. And
mm,
he said, just make sure you pull out all the necessary stops and you ask the right people things. And I did my own research and was able to put that together and with my team and did a press run in Chicago, kind of discussing it. But um, it was interesting to me because I was born in 1985. I'll turn 40 in May,
mm.
and I wasn't even born when this game came out. So for me, 85 is a special year, not just because I was born, but because when you look at the All-Star game in and of itself and just watching the game from start to finish, um, they were playing defense in that game the whole game. And what gets lost in translation is this wasn't really about Michael. Like you saw Michael coming, you knew he was the future. You saw him coming in a Wemby or in a Wemby sort of way, or like a LeBron when he first came into the league. But that game was about Dr. J. It was about Larry Bird. They
Mhm.
were the LeBrons and KDs of their era at that point. You had the Celtics and 76ers rivalry back then, and those guys were in their element. And you hear a lot of different things about Isaiah and Michael, and Isaiah and I have had conversations about Michael. I've met Michael before when I was a child during my child reporting days. He was nice to me. But as far as just the actual game, Isaiah did pass the ball, but there were a lot of other guys getting the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Bernard King was scoring in that game. You had Larry scoring. You had Dr. J scoring. You had a lot of guys that had to share that basketball. And so going 2 for 9, scored 7 points. He was drafted in '84. Talking about Michael. Hakeem Olajuwon was a rookie on the Western team, and Ralph Sampson was dominating that game.
Right.
And so,
MVP.
yeah, he was the MVP of that game. So I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I could not just discuss the game. I had to go through the Pistons Bulls rivalry and
Yeah.
all that went with that. I had to talk about even the notion of the people saying that they don't think the freeze out happened. Well, what sparked Michael and Isaiah's beef? And there's a multitude of things that people said, but I'll add that I also added how much motivation for players is an interesting thing. I tied in a conversation that I had with Shaq
Yeah.
about how he made up this whole story about David Robinson not signing something for him when he was in high school. Shaq, of course, is from Newark, New Jersey, but was an Army brat kid, so he lived in the San Antonio, Texas area for a while because of his dad's job. And he made up this whole story about David Robinson not signing something for him, and he used that as motivation when he played in the league. David, of course, a little older than Shaq. So I tap into that because I said to myself and to the viewers, well, if the freeze out didn't happen the way it was said to have happened, did Michael use that as motivation?
Right.
Isaiah being from Chicago, Michael playing for the Bulls, and I actually had a family friend who lived with Michael, a family friend of Isaiah Thomas's who was a ball boy for the Chicago Bulls, who lived with Michael his first few years in the NBA, and he kind of talked about Michael and Isaiah. It's just a lot of different perspectives and injecting my thoughts where I could and just telling a story about 20 plus minutes long. And like I said, you can check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I think it was cool because that freeze out situation is one of those like it's not as big as like a what's the
The flu
what's
game?
what's the no, I was actually thinking football, deflate gate. Like it's not
Oh
like
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah, yeah,
wasn't like this
yeah.
huge scandal type of thing, but it was like this, it's just one of those kind of weird NBA stories. Did it happen? Did it not? And then the backdrop is just the Michael Isaiah rivalry, so it
It
adds
fit the
credence to it
narrative.
because it fit the narrative. And you did say it, and having watched it and coming away from it and hearing people who were around talk about the temperament of the game and Michael and Isaiah and like what was actually going on, it doesn't seem, it feels like this might have just been a made up thing. It could have someone, Michael himself could have been someone, maybe even Michael himself, someone could have just suggested at any point or hinted at like, yo, they're not passing me the ball or they're not passing Mike. It could have just started with that, and it just grew from there.
What's interesting? I said this on another show. I talked about Nick Anderson, most notably an Orlando Magic legend, now an ambassador with the Magic today. And back in the playoffs when Michael came back and he switched from number 45 to 23. And there was a quote that everybody ran with where basically he said, 45 was not as good as 23 or 23 is not as good as 45. I can't remember the exact quote, but Nick, I consider a friend, and I asked him about that on record. And, he said to me that quote was taken out of context. And back then, players didn't really challenge media like that. They kind of just they heard what was going on, they read what was going on, but they kind of stayed aloof. Today's player, they're challenging stuff because it's on social media. They're challenging things or they're calling fake news. That being said, I look at that portion of history where Nick Anderson says he didn't make a big stink about it. And then I wonder if that may have been the same case with what was being written about back in '85
Mm,
with the freeze out game. I
hmm.
wonder.
Yeah. Yeah, like in real time. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, was it Were people picking up on things? Was it because again, a lot of from what I heard in the documentary felt like people were even Isaiah himself had said to you that he didn't even know Michael felt certain ways about him until he saw The Last Dance.
Right. I think that Isaiah could have shaken Michael's hand after
That had to
the
rub Mike.
conference
That
finals.
had to rub people the wrong way. I mean, and you had mentioned
And,
you even document and kind of timelined how uh and I think I don't know if it was Isaiah himself who had said it, but shaking hands after the game became like mandatory after
yeah,
1991. It was
he
like
said
everyone
that
shook hands.
he said that on Mark Jackson's podcast how it seemed like the shaking hands part became a thing after Michael. And I find that interesting um, for a myriad of reasons. And the one that I'll name is that the Bulls became the first team to have won championships to publicly out former champions. And I learned from talking to other Hall of Famers where champions don't dog champions. They don't do that. I've been in rooms where, you know, Scottie Pippen has spoken about Isaiah and not a kind way. I'm cool with Scottie. I'm cool with Isaiah, but it 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 seemed a little weird to hear it because I like both of them. I never really heard Magic dog Isaiah publicly. You knew that there was something there, but it was never talked about. And I never heard Isaiah dog Magic. I never really heard LeBron dog Michael. You saw the interview he did with Pat McAfee. He still spoke glowingly about Michael. And I think those are just competitive things that stay in those rooms. I think that they're like, for example, I think LeBron had the respect of Kobe, and I've shared this before. I'll share it with you. I was with the Lakers the night LeBron broke Kobe's score record, and it was in Philadelphia. And um, LeBron yelled in the locker room, "Yo, we ain't going home tonight. We going home tomorrow." The Lakers were scheduled to leave that night to fly back to LA. They were on a long East Coast road trip. They played the Nets, the Knicks, the Sixers, the Wizards, I believe, on that road trip. And then they found out about Kobe's passing on the plane. Dwight Howard yelled on the plane, "Yo, Kobe died." And people trying to sleep, man, shut the hell up. But the night before they left, LeBron is on the phone with Kobe and they're exchanging pleasantries, and there are guys in the room listening to the conversation. The silence was deafening, the conversations that LeBron was having with Kobe on the phone. There was a respect that LeBron had for Kobe and vice versa. But from what LeBron said, it wasn't until LeBron became a Laker that there was that mutual respect that was there. I
Mm.
don't really know the relationship that Michael has with LeBron, as you saw on Scoopy Radio recently. Jason Williams shared that he played golf with Michael and Oakley, and Michael had shared that LeBron could play in any era. So there's obviously a respect there. So that kind of goes along the lines of what LeBron said about he and Michael will probably have a deeper conversation once LeBron retires. But to go back to that whole champion thing, I think the Bulls kind of broke script with, you know, outing, or I don't even want to say outing, just not doing what other champions did
Mm.
publicly.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's good. That's fascinating stuff, man. Really cool piece. Scoop B original. You can check it out on scoopb.com and on his YouTube channel, Scoop B, unpacking the infamous 1985 Michael Jordan freeze out game. They call it the freeze out game because it was widely reported that they froze him out. They were intentionally not letting Michael get the ball and do things. And yeah, if the last dance is any indication, it's perfectly possible that that was just one of just another thing that was fabricated for extra motivation. I think that's totally possible.
There you go.
Brandon Scoop B Robinson, always good to have you, man. Always good stuff. Great to see you, brother.
Thank you for the opportunity to be myself, brother.